What is up, Copy Squad? It's your boy Kyle Milligan of KyleTheWriter.com, and today we're going to talk about ethics in advertising and marketing, basically about the social responsibility of copywriters. I brought a special guest on. Once again, this is Sean. Tell us about yourself, Sean.
I am the associate publisher of Laissez-Faire and Choose Yourself Financial. I'm also a copywriter here at Agora Financial. I also run Mark Ford, otherwise known as Michael Masterson's business.
Okay, so basically the point of Sean's presence is we're going to talk about ethics in advertising and marketing, and what responsibilities, like social responsibilities, a copywriter has. I have written a couple of promos, and they have gone out to a lot of people. But looking at the grander scale of things, right? Like maybe that is a very narrow point of view. Like it's one guy. It can be interpreted as like one guy trying to make a buck. My friend Sean here works at the macro level. Like he's put out a lot of content in his career, and he has, I would say, probably a grander responsibility than say like an individual copywriter like myself. And this video is being made in response to a Twitter message that I got. I don't even mess around with Twitter. I tweet I'm the worst tweeter. I'm the worst Twitterer in the planet. And so I got a Twitter message. It was basically like, hey man, I'm not being a hater, which I really appreciate him starting like that, because nobody likes haters. Because I'm not being a hater, but have you considered like the moral and like ethical position of selling financial advice when it has been like economists have proven that you cannot predict the market, I believe is what he said. And I think I think that's like a cool point. I think that's a smart point of view to take, like to look at the bigger picture like that. But I think that's actually a really almost easy to answer question. And I kind of want to talk about that question in particular, because I think we can knock that one out pretty quick.
Yeah.
But then kind of expand into like the broader, reaches of like, scammy, hypey copywriting and all that stuff, because it seems to be like so many beginners' main objections. Like, man, I want to write copy, I want to sell things, but do I have to write those sleazy sales letters? And I think they get tied up, and they become concerned about like the ethics of it, right? And the social responsibilities behind, like, are you shilling a bad product? And I think what gets confused, and I'll talk about this more in just a moment, I think what gets confused is the idea of like really, I would say hypey or like effective sales copy and like messaging versus like shilling a bad product, because that's something you never want to do, is like just put out like a garbage product.
Right.
Okay. So first, let's talk about the original question, which was basically, how do you sell financial advice if economists have already proven that you cannot predict the markets?
Well, I mean, not to get all nerdy about it, but it is actually very easy to beat the markets. Like, for example, if you buy $1,000 of the S&P 500, it goes down a certain amount. You buy another $1,000, your cost basis has gone down. The S&P goes back up to where it was. The S&P 500 has had a net gain of 0, but you have had a gain greater than the market. Therefore, you have beaten the market in that set amount of time.
Right, and I think even to play devil's advocate and challenge that. So the question didn't actually say like, I think it's been proven a million ways you can beat the market. I mean, you just have to look to like the classic example of like the Warren Buffetts of the world, like the Ray Dalios, the dudes who have consistently beaten the market.
Yeah, or Jim Simons, who literally has had 30% compound annualized gains for like decades.
Right.
Using quantitative algorithmic trading.
So like part of, I think, the answer to that question is to like start a new question, which would be like, would it be immoral to ask those guys for advice? Right? Would it be immoral if those guys said, you know what, I'll tell you my strategies?
I personally don't think that is necessarily immoral, but I think that's a complicated question.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody listening to this right now would say, hey, it's immoral to get trading advice from Warren Buffett. That's one of the reasons why so many people, download and read his shareholder letters. They want to know what he's buying, and people base their investing decisions on that. And most of those people have done great and beaten the broader markets.
Right.
So,
and I think that brings us like full circle, because that question in itself makes sense if you're selling a bad product.
Yeah.
If you're selling something that doesn't really help anybody, if you're selling something that doesn't perform the things that it says it will perform,
Yeah.
and we're about to enter that weird mix of, well, what about those hypey sales letters?
Yeah.
So now, are you selling a bad product because you didn't necessarily make $10 million in 1 week?
Yeah.
So at that point, the product, and that's where I think I want to draw the line. Like, I don't think it's immoral to sell financial advice. It's because also
Especially if you're selling the real deal.
we only sell research.
Yeah.
Like, by law, we can only tell you research about the financial markets.
Exactly.
So
we have a publisher's exemption with the SEC.
Right.
Yeah.
So we are selling the information. So if it's just like anything, where if you went and bought some investor's book, if you bought I'm blanking on all the investor books I've ever bought. But yeah, I'm blanking. Like
Benjamin Graham's Intelligent Investor, Seth Klarman's Margin of Safety. What was the other one? It was the yellow book. Evaldo loves this. The one I'm talking about.
The yellow book.
Oh, forget it.
Like Complete Idiot's Guide to Stock
Complete
Investing.
Idiot's Guide to Stock Investing.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, it's just like buying that. That's basically the product that we're selling. So I think one of the next, moving forward into it, is more about the copy. I think that's where people get twisted up, and they're like, but the copy's so hypey. There's all these huge promises, and it's so sleazy and salesy and blah blah blah. Okay,
I would like to speak to that in particular.
Do.
So for me, it comes down to a question. What is the difference between like a scam and an actual like info product that you're selling? Like, what is that fine line that distinguishes a scam from not a scam?
I think it would have to be the obvious choice. It's the intention. The intention is to basically just steal all your cash,
right? Versus,
I'm going to give you this product in exchange for cash.
I would say that that's exactly it. So like, people will see our copy and our promises, and they will automatically assume, oh, this must be a scam, when we're over here spending literally millions of dollars to produce actual products that we send to people so that we can help them make more money, or navigate a difficult financial situation, or get advice on a particular health issue. Mm-hmm. We specifically are very invested in fulfilling on every single promise that we make in copy, no matter how hypey it is.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about that hypey copy, and that's something that I want to speak on. And I think this is really important, and it dives right back into my general platform as like a person on YouTube marketing my own products right here, right now. Yeah. My main message is that copywriting is a language, and it is not a language like people believe it to be super easy to learn because it is written in simple English. However, the meaning, the subtext that's communicated beneath the words is actually much more, it's like complex, because it's a language that you've probably never learned to speak. Like, you've never had actual education on this is how you speak. And that language is the subcommunication of emotion. So whenever you're writing copy, you're speaking directly to your emotional brain. We're talking directly to the croc brain or the lizard brain or whatever you want to call it. That old fighter, the amygdala. Okay, whatever, guy. So anyway, we're speaking to that, and you've never been formally trained to talk to that. You've been formally trained to make factual arguments and factual statements and say things that make logical sense. And you have been, I guess maybe over time, you have begun to believe that that's what makes people do things, is logic, rationality, like thought processes. But what is really happening, and I can compare this to several things, is we write the way we write because we're trying to persuade. And the most efficient way to do that is to speak directly to the emotional part of the brain. So my whole book, Take Their Money, here comes the plug, is at kylethewriter.com/book.
I beta read it in an early draft, and it is actually very, very good. I've read a lot of books on copy, and I would say that for somebody actually trying to sit down, write a sales letter, and learn that distinction between a normal register of language and a sales register of language, your book breaks it down extremely well, because it does get into the specific codes. I would say it's like you unveil the coded language of copy and sales. And that is ultimately what you are getting across in your book, I think, in my opinion.
I appreciate that. Well, there's a testimonial right there in real time from the publisher of like a zillion businesses at Agora Financial, who's read a lot of copy. But yeah, so what I do in the book is I try to instruct you on a new way of thinking things. Because instead of approaching it as I'm going to use these English words to say this English thing that's very rational, I am teaching you how to speak directly to the emotional part of the brain. And this is where you see that as a person on the outside looking in at a sales letter. And you see those words and you see how much excitement they're meant to convey and how much emotion they're meant to stir up. And as a logical person who's not the target audience most of the time looking at that, you go, well, these words seem very extreme. Now, I want to compare this to basically romance, dating, and like attraction, okay?
Yeah.
I want to compare this to basically, let me tell you something I learned in the dating game. I learned in the dating game very early on.
After this, can I make this a little bit more nerdy so that I can tolerate this conversation?
Yeah, so in the dating game, I learned, actually I didn't learn early on, I learned late on. And when I learned this was a big game changer for me, was basically that, you know, all the little things that you're worried about as a person, all your little insecurities, nobody else makes them a big deal unless you make them a big deal. Most of the time, they don't even matter. As a matter of fact, the less you think about them and the less you care about them, the more attractive you become. Because byproduct is you become confident. And when you become confident, you are communicating subtly. All these things you don't realize you're communicating. The way you stand, the way you walk, the way you talk, your presence completely changes.
Yeah.
Now you're doing all this sub-communication through body language and through the way you carry yourself. And it's all because your emotions are transmitting a new signal, and it's due to confidence, okay? So if I do learn how to become confident, and that makes me now more appealing to women, right?
Yeah.
Am I a scam? Or have I simply learned how to subtly communicate through the subtext of my body language and the way I carry myself, how to manipulate their emotions to find me more attractive? That's what we're doing with the words on the page. We're using the words to set up the scene of that confident person that's more attractive, right? These words are attractive because they trigger those emotions. They trigger a different set of emotions. They trigger your persuasion and sales emotions. But is it a scam or is it immoral? You know, is it unethical to learn that skill set and to trigger it on purpose?
I would say that depends on the fulfillment, and you might have a lot of ex-girlfriends who might speak to that, yes, perhaps that was indeed a scam. But I'm giving you a hard time. Like, no, I don't think that that's immoral. And like, let me ground it in a more specific example from your own life. Trump bonus checks.
Okay.
For me, with copywriting, a lot of how I learned how to copywrite, I looked back to a lot of rhetoricians, to Aristotle, to Socrates, to the rhetoricians of ancient Greece and things like that. And I dug really deeply into like the flowers of rhetoric and things like that. And so for me, the phrase Trump bonus checks is no different than my love is a red, red rose. It's a metaphor. Trump bonus checks is a justifiable, grounded metaphor for dividend-paying companies, which, by the way, we have economic proof beats the market. So, like, for me, if you look at Trump bonus checks, dividend-paying companies that benefit from a specific opportunity in the macroeconomy, all of a sudden you have a grounded metaphor that makes it enticing and, you know, really exciting for people, a specific demographic of people, let's be honest. That is no different from a metaphor like my love is a red, red rose. That's it.
I like
and
that.
also we fulfill it, and that portfolio has been killing it recently.
Right. I think that's another important thing, and it also comes back to, there's another point I wanted to make here. So the first thing is, like, let's talk about the hypey sales copy. We kind of addressed that, right? Like, when you really think about it, we're simply using what works. Just like a woman wears makeup and heels and does her hair. Does that make her a scam? Does that make her unethical? Does that make her immoral to make herself more attractive? Or does she know that this triggers the response that she desires, and she utilizes that for her advantage, right? You don't go around and say, scam, Maybelline, down with them, that's not how it works. You just know that's what works, and so it makes sense to do it that way. So when we write that hypey copy, it needs to be written that way because we know that this is the makeup. you don't just write plain, boring words and go out without makeup. You make that shit up. You put makeup all over it. Okay, so there's...
For me, like, I compare that to, like, the Apple computer ad from, like, 1984 that was all dressed up like you're fighting against Big Brother and you're throwing a fucking sledgehammer against this big picture of Big Brother up there. And, you know, a Macintosh computer is not revolutionary. Mm-hmm. That's a metaphor. And you're trying to tack on these big, you know, really impressive and, like, grandiose ideas to a very ordinary thing. And that fundamentally is no different from, you know, Robert Burns, My Love is a Red, Red Rose, or
a plain woman with really good makeup.
I am not going to go there. And he's trying to drag me out on that because we had a long conversation about that 2 days ago, and he knows that I'm not on board.
What? I don't know what he's talking about.
Oh, well,
anyway.
I don't know. Who knows?
So, okay, so we talked about the dressing up the copy, essentially, right?
Yeah.
Wear clothes that flatter your figure. Okay, does that count? Like something like that? I'm not calling you out. I'm just saying, like, those kinds of things, like, whatever way you want to think about it, whatever way you want to look at it. That's the way I see it works.
It's a good metaphor.
To do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so that's one thing. So, okay, we've addressed predicting the market and beating the market. All right, the next thing, yeah, it can be done. People do it all the time. They're on the news. Oh, which brings me, like, should we shut down CNBC? Should we shut down Business Insider? Should we shut down Forbes? Are they immoral for, like, talking about business and markets and investing and all that stuff?
Can I speak to that, actually?
Okay.
Here's an interesting thing.
All right.
You know, when I got into this business years ago, I initially was, like, really put off by copy. And then I started seeing the feedback. And there were people that were like, yeah, I spent, you know, $2,000 on your thing. And obviously, that product was not right for that audience. If you don't have $2,000 to spend on a newsletter, you shouldn't buy the newsletter.
Makes sense.
So, the people that do have the money to invest and do indeed invest, I've seen life-changing stuff. You know, I was actually with, you know, your audience probably is aware of, like, Palm Beach Research Group and, like, cryptos and things like that. I was there, you know, from day one when they were starting to release crypto research. We made people millionaires. And now that I'm with, like, laissez-faire, I have seen testimonials roll in, and we've actually interviewed people that have gotten help from James and gotten advice from James that have made them literally millionaires.
Yeah, James has changed a lot of people's lives.
He's changed a lot of people's
lives. He's changed my life. He made me choose myself. I quit, like, all my jobs. I work at Agora Financial now. Weird twist of fate.
Yeah, and, like, Mark Ford, too. Like, the testimonials roll in, and they are all legitimate because they actually help people's lives with this paid research.
Yeah.
And so it is hard for me to say, like, what we're doing is a scam when we're literally helping people. I have never, ever seen a person become a millionaire listening to CNN, reading the Wall Street Journal, watching CNBC. I have literally met people who have become millionaires investing with newsletters and message boards.
That's huge. I mean, the proof is in the pudding sort of thing.
So for me, like, I don't have an ethical problem at all with what we do because I know that we have legitimately helped people.
That's actually brings me to point 3. So point 1 was, can you predict and beat the market? So I guess statistics say, a statistician would say you can't predict the market, but we can beat the market, so that question becomes irrelevant, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Question number 2 was about, like, okay, what about this hypey sales copy? Do I have to write, like, a sleazeball? I don't know. Do you want to communicate with their emotions directly? That's up to you, man. Like, take their money, kylerwriter.com/book. Anyway, so, you know, actually, speaking of that, I was actually talking to, I'll say, somebody today at Agora.
Yeah.
And I'm actually considering changing the title of Take Their Money.
I think you should change the title.
Because it does convey that I am, like, one of those shysters. Yeah. I think I can see that. And I wanted it to do it to grab attention and be polarizing.
Yeah.
But as I scale this offer and get in front of more people who won't take the time to watch all these YouTube videos or like, see all the other free stuff that I do, they're going to immediately judge that this is a shyster, bad marketer kind of guy. Yeah. So I'm thinking about changing the book title of Take Their Money. We'll talk about that in another video. I think I'll change the title. It's just it's a digital download anyway. I can change it if I really need to. So the point 3 was, okay, can't predict, but we can beat. What about salesy copy? We write salesy copy because it works. It transmits directly to the emotional thing. Yeah. And then point 3, I think you just hit. And that my point 3 was to say, sell them what they want, give them what they need. And I think I got that from Matt Fury, who is Chris Haddad, I think is how you say it. He's like a genius copywriter who wrote in the dating niche. He wrote Texture X back, that sales letter, I think. And it was like it made him famous. Like, it was such a good sales letter. And basically the point he made, which I stand by too, is that okay, I hate to keep coming back to the makeup thing, right?
Can we please find another metaphor?
Let's try something else. Okay.
A dude in a suit. How about a dude in a suit?
Well, dude in a suit's great. Dude in a suit is great. If you are the best, let's say, real estate agent, okay, in the world, and you show up in a flower shirt and
Looking like
sandals, right? Then I am not going to buy a house with you. You just don't look the part.
Right.
Like, you just do not interest me. You don't look like someone who can help me make money.
Yeah.
But whenever you write the salesy, hypey copy, right? When you do the things that hit their emotions, you're giving them what they want. What they need is the house that's perfect for them, right? But they won't even listen to you if you're not wearing the suit and tie. So you have to be communicating and hitting those emotional triggers, or you won't, like, people love to say things that just make me angry. Like, this gives honest marketers a bad name. Oh, you mean people who don't know how to market?
I have a great point to make about quote-unquote honest or sophisticated marketers in a moment once you're done with this particular.
Okay, I'm glad you stopped me. I felt a rant coming on. Like, I can feel like the sizzle like disappearing.
Yeah.
Okay, the difference. I mean, we're not dishonest marketers for being good at marketing. That's what makes me angry. Like,
I mean, there is an element of social responsibility there that I think in ethical marketing, as long as you don't say anything that's fundamentally untrue, as long as your financial package contains necessary risk language that has been vetted by a compliance department, which all of ours is, as long as you are making efforts to fulfill on every single promise that you make and justify those promises with actual evidence that is vetted by a compliance department, there's nothing ethical or socially irresponsible. I mean, again, like, we're not running a charity. Mm-hmm. You know, we're not trying to, change the world or...
we're selling advice.
Yeah, we're selling advice. And we're selling advice so that the prospect has a better life and we have a better life. And, legally we're not allowed to invest in any of the companies that we recommend. And there are some stipulations for other people, like lower people in the company and things like that. But we can certainly invest in the same ideas, and we do. And I can tell you that I do, and I made a killing in cryptos in 2006, 2017 after I learned about cryptos from a newsletter. So, come on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I really love that line. That line has always stuck with me. Sell them what they want and give them what they need. Like, what they want is text your ex back, where all I gotta do is text a couple lines and my girlfriend comes back. But in the fulfillment, in the product, you need to explain that when you're texting her, you need to be like a confident and charming individual who's like, you're not really emotionally manipulating anybody or doing anything skeezy or weird or creepy. Or what you're doing is, when you're texting, here's some like friendly, charming, or confident sort of ways to basically make yourself more attractive. Right. So you sell them text your ex, and then you give them exactly what they need, which is like how to be like a better human being, and how to. I'm not sure. I've never read that book or whatever it is that it's selling, but that's kind of like my rationality of it behind this. My hedge, my legal disclaimer there.
Absolutely.
I've never read that or seen that package, but that's kind of like the same thing. Right?
I've heard the sort of logic, and I don't really like this because it seems paternalistic to me, but a lot of people here, I will hear them say like, oh, we dress up copy to sound compelling because we know what's best for the prospect, and they will not act irrationally. So we need to tap into their irrationally.
I feel like that's everything I just said.
Right. I'm recasting what you said to reinforce what you just said.
Okay.
We have to tap into irrationality in order to have them do rational things.
Okay.
And for me, that feels paternalistic, but at the same time, like, there is an element to truth to that. And, if you have a better product that's provably better, you need to make sure that you are selling it as aggressively as possible so that people actually benefit from it.
Right. There's this argument I've heard too, where like, you are obligated to sell your good product so that the other like true scammers out there do not like succeed.
Yeah.
Like, it's up to you to get all these customers, to inform them like true with like good information. Yeah. Like, Like, you need to get my book, Take Their Money, so that you can learn how
Soon
to
to be
really,
retitled, Take Their Money.
How to really get like good copywriting advice instead of these sham courses. I just had a guy on LinkedIn message me and said, like, I've been following the big names in copywriting for, he said in 3 days on like looking at my free stuff. I don't even know if he's got my book. My free stuff has done more for him in 3 days than the last 6 months, probably paying out the ass.
Yeah.
Like for someone's bad advice, because I mean, there's no alternative. So it's like there is a school of thought that would say Kyle is morally obligated to push his book and to get it out there and to get like the real. I mean, you're sitting in the basement of Agora Financial with me right now. Like, when you think about that, like, has anybody else done this? Has anybody else like this? The curtain can't get any pulled backer.
Well, it could, but I think we would be making other shareholders mad if we did that.
Right.
Are there any questions that
I was going to
to
say,
address?
I did not ask for
I
questions.
have a story about...
Bring up questions. If you have questions, feel free to drop them. What up, Jared? What up, Dan? Thanks for tuning in, guys. And I forgot to tag Sean in this. I wonder if I can edit it now that we're already doing it. So tell your story. I'm going to tag you. What's your story, bruh?
My story?
Yeah, tell it, boy.
I was a college professor for 7 years. I was sick of making so little money that I actually had to wait tables on the side. And so I got into freelancing for a little bit, mainly editorial, mainly just writing. I got hooked up with PVRG, and because I was with PVRG, I got hooked up with Mark Ford. I became his managing editor and did a little bit of writing and research for him, and quickly rose in the ranks, made a name for myself very, very quickly. Had a couple of bylines in the Palm Beach Letter newsletter. Mark Ford tapped me to run his content licensing business, and a couple other businesses and opportunities that he wanted me to take on. I've done a pretty good job with that. That parlayed into the opportunity here at Agora Financial, where I started out running Mark Ford's little imprint, but then also became a copywriter. I worked with Rich Sheffrin, I worked with Joe Schriefer, I worked with James Altucher, I've worked with David Deutsch, for example. I've worked with a lot of big names in this business, and I've developed a very robust Rolodex because the way you learn copy is, really, there are 3 ways. You read as few books on theory as possible. So one of them could be Take Their Money. The other is to read a lot of copy.
Which is what Take Their Money promotes.
Yeah. And the other is to get feedback and constructive criticism from people who've done this for years. Those are the only 3 ways to learn how to be a really good copywriter, I think. And in fact, when I first started writing copy, I read Mark Ford's Great Leads because it was easy. I was publishing that book and the content in it, and republishing it. And I went to Mark and I said, I don't want to dilly-dally with other BS. Like, should I get courses? He, for example, founded AWAI. And I was like, should I go into an AWAI course? And he said, no. With Great Leads, you have enough theory. Now start reading promotions.
I think that's fantastic advice. I think you nailed it. Like, you gotta, don't read about copy, read copy.
Yeah.
So we got any questions? Jared says, people will spend their money how they want. If you don't sell them something beneficial, they'll spend their money on something bad.
I agree with that. I mean, people are always hunting down for the dollars. And let's be real, there are real scams out there. There are scam cryptocurrency things. There are scam financial things, like binary options and betting, like sports betting, for example. Those scams exist because you can't possibly fulfill on that. But you can have legitimate research that you package and sell at a premium because it's really expensive to run this business. And it really legitimately helps people.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to do.
I think at 28 minutes we can wrap it on up. I don't see any more questions coming in. Jared does say...
Before we do, can I tell my story about like the distinction between a good story or example that I have?
Let me read this comment really quick.
All right, fair.
All right. Jared says, it's effing amazing. Quit underselling it with that. It's actually pretty good BS. He's talking about my book, Take Their Money.
It's pretty good.
All right, anyway. Go ahead and tell... thanks, Jared. Thanks for the love, man.
So don't close it out, because I have this point that I want to make, which is... So, 2 promotions. Let's do a tale of 2 promotions. One of them, sleazy, scammy sounding, super hypey, and it like really just like it was super fluffy. It had the most aggressive copy in the world. It sounded like a pie in the sky fantasy.
Right.
Have that. And I have that promo in my mind and the product that it sold. I also have a recent webinar that I saw. And it is, super sophisticated sounding. It's attached to a really credible name. There is so much proof. All the claims are downplayed a bit to seem perfectly reasonable and accessible and like possible for that anybody could do it. And it's specifically designed to go to a more sophisticated investor. That product, I know the track record for both of those products. Which one do you think killed it in terms of track record?
I mean, I think that this is a loaded example. It's going to be this one over here.
It was the sleazy, gross sounding newsletter. And here's the reason why that particular worked. That sophisticated sounding promo, it was specifically trying to qualify buyers to get true investors with a lot of money, because they're typically not going to buy your like get rich quick pie in the sky kind of stuff. But if you lower the language a little bit, increase the FK score a little bit, use the sorts of examples and claims that would be a little bit more persuasive to a true like Wall Street, kind of person.
Throw some jargon in there.
Exactly. I'm not going to name names. But ultimately, the fulfillment of that product sucked. It constantly lost money. And it was from a big name person who was attached to a really big name politician. And I'm not going to name names. But
I'm sensing I know which one you're talking about.
You might know which one I'm talking about. And that, one of the advantages of being a publisher is I get to see every product's track record. And I get to see what wins and what doesn't on the editorial and fulfillment side. Now, the sleazy sounding promotion that had a bunch of pie in the sky stuff, it was sugar around a little bit of medicine. And what it ultimately sold behind it killed it. It absolutely killed it. It literally has made people write in of their own accord how many tens of thousands of dollars. And that was geared towards people that would be more likely to take that offer. Because it's not just about the claims you make, it's how you qualify the buyer, it's the type of people you're trying to talk to and attract. And
Research.
And we specifically geared that fulfillment, that product, towards those people with not as much money as like a sophisticated investor. So this one clearly was a money grab that fulfilled terribly. And this one clearly sounded like a money grab, but fulfilled it awesomely.
Right. So, moral of the story, salesy copy doesn't make it a scam. Salesy copy makes
It's
it...
not immoral.
It's not immoral. It's not unethical.
Yeah.
The social responsibility probably lies... Not probably, but it lies more in the fulfillment end.
I agree.
There's nothing like...
You have to keep your promises in this business.
Yeah.
If you don't keep your promises...
Furthermore, everyone wants to say, like, especially Agora Financial is the biggest target, right? It's the easiest company to identify and, like, point the finger at.
Yeah.
Everyone likes to say stuff like, Agora Financial is... Basically, they point the finger for these questions at us because we have the most visible sales copy. The promotions are everywhere. Like, James Altucher blew up the internet last year with crypto. So, I mean, they point the finger at us.
Which, by the way, like, James Altucher, every crypto he has recommended has not gone bust. Like, he has not recommended one scam coin. Ever.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like, I think I lost my train of thought.
You were talking about...
Oh, we're still around. I think that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Like, dude, if people weren't... Like, we would go belly up. Like, it would not be feasible to be this public. Like, to be this in the limelight. To be this visible. And at the end of the day, when people invest their money, sometimes stocks will go down.
Yeah.
And just like if I went and bought like a new... Pretend this is a toothbrush, right? I bought a toothbrush and I started brushing my teeth. And let's say it splintered and stabbed me in the gum.
Yeah.
One toothbrush out of 100 billion toothbrushes stabbed me in the gum.
It was faulty.
Yeah, guess what? Now I'm going to go on every site and I'm going to complain. And I'm going to go to Better Business Bureau. And I'm going to go to the courts and sue because I got stabbed in the gum with this toothbrush. And it is that fact that if you invest, let's say, I don't want to speak specifically, but generally speaking, if you follow the smart strategies for the long run, and you practice what the newsletters are helping you to do,
Yeah.
okay, I'm trying to be very legally hedged here,
Yeah.
then you have a better chance at success than should you put all your money into one stock and it doesn't do well. Like,
Yeah.
then you go on websites and you complain that Agora Financial ruined you. That's not how it works.
And also, like, we are legal. Imagine if you bought that toothbrush that splintered in your mouth, but that toothbrush package had, hey, it is entirely possible that this toothbrush will splinter and stab you in the mouth.
Okay, so we do that in our
Which
promo.
we are legally obligated to say.
Right.
Like, because it could possibly happen. Like, we don't know what's going to happen to the American economy tomorrow.
Right.
I mean, yeah, the sun could also go out tomorrow as well, but at the same time, we have a good amount of evidence and a good amount of track record to suggest that what we're doing and fulfilling is pretty solid.
And all this isn't just to like talk and hype and what's the word I'm looking for? Harp on Agora Financial, but it's basically to illustrate to copywriters that at the end of the day, you know, every copywriting book will tell you this: don't sell a bad product. You know, doesn't say don't use hypey copy. It says don't sell a bad product.
Yeah.
Use what you got to use to get the good product sold. I think that's the moral of the story. We're at 35 minutes. Nick says, you should put the book in EPUB format. I just finished it. Great book, Kyle. Thank you, Nick. All right, I think that's a good sign-off line right there. We're going to love that one. All right. Go to... All right, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope this was actually, like, informative, and like I hope it was a perspective changer for some people on the fence. I know the people who think we're scum are forever going to think we're scum, and the people who are raving fans about us are going to always think they're raving fans about us. But I'm hoping that any folks chilling on the fence feel better about it now. They understand that behind all these sales letters are human beings, are people who are writing these things, and we have
very, very hard.
Yeah, like we are not like just like, you know, gremlins and minions in some basement. We're just
Pulling
this basement.
numbers out of the air.
Yeah, like we're actually doing like you said, we're working very hard, and we all want.
Everybody in this building works very hard, and we spend a lot of money to make sure that the advice that we're giving is vetted, is credible, is backed up by a ton of research, and by people who have had success.
Great. All right, that's cool. I got to wrap it up now.
Do it.
We're almost at 40 minutes. Good Lord. Thanks so much for tuning in, Copy Squad. Please go to kylethewriter.com/book and check out my book, which is currently named Take Their Money. It may change soon. Please drop that link in the comments for me. Peace out, Copy Squad.
Bye.